Welcome to Young Voices Changing the Currents. I'm your host, Haley Platt. My goal is to create a safe space that inspires students to share, inspire, and shape their futures together. Special thank you to our sponsors, Siembra Mobile. Thank you for listening today and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's dive right in. Hi, my name is Haley Platt. Welcome to Young Voices Changing the Currents. I'd like to welcome my guest today, Melody Mann. She is a PhD candidate at the University of Maryland. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about the education experience for students, and just kind of get an idea of Melody's thoughts because she is researching and is a part of academia.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, great. So first, tell me a bit about yourself and where you went to school, what major you were.
Yeah, so let's get started. My name is Melody Mann. I'm currently a second-year PhD student at the University of Maryland, pursuing my PhD in sociology with an emphasis in special education, particularly disability studies. But I wasn't always obviously in a PhD program. So I started off at San Jose State. I got my bachelor's in child and adolescent development teacher prep with a minor in early childhood special education. Really great experience. I was a part of the McNair Scholars Program. I did Spartan Scholars. So I was a part of a lot of transition and support groups at the time for first generation students that I actually didn't know about until I went to San Jose State. And it was those support groups that helped me as a first gen student kind of explore what higher education is, what that looks like, and what that would mean for me. And I think that's what propelled me further to pursue graduate school. I got my master's of science in special education for mild to moderate disabilities from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. Had a great time there. It was during COVID, so it was an entirely virtual program, which was very interesting. Throughout this time of like San Jose State and Cal Poly in between, I was also teaching. So I did Montessori classroom teaching for infancy up until kindergarten. I did special education teaching at the time too, and resource classrooms. So in addition to going to school, I think being a classroom teacher really helped me understand what the education landscape really looks like. Um, Going forward, I decided to keep going with graduate school. I went to the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I was doing my PhD in psychology at the time. But given things that happened with faculty and funding, I ended up closing out at the master's level, and now I'm in Maryland doing my continuing my PhD in sociology. So as you can tell, I kind of jumped around from human development to special ed to psychology to sociology. So I've definitely explored my interests very broadly.
Yes, well, that's why it's great to have you on. You truly understand just the wide range of student needs and what's going on in academia today. So, with that said, what shifts are you seeing in today's college landscape?
Yeah, I would say the shifts in college landscapes is that it doesn't matter what age you start college. You can go, there's so many options and routes you can take. I think traditionally we were always conditioned that right after I get out of high school, I have to go to college, a 4-year institute right away. But in reality, there's so many other pathways you can take. You can go to a 2-year college. Sometimes you can just finish your associates first, get some work experience, and then continue your bachelor's. Or you can get into programs that are bachelor's, master's combined, where you do an additional year. You can get your master's and your bachelor's. Sometimes there's programs that take you straight from a bachelor's into a PhD program, which I never knew was a thing. I think navigating college as a first gen student, you really never know what's truly out there because some of this information you don't know until you're admitted. But I can safely say now that I think college is becoming so open-ended, it's becoming so welcoming for students of all backgrounds, all levels, that you can really customize and tailor your experience to what you want.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think post-COVID, the stigma has changed so much about what are you doing after high school? It's not necessarily a straight line path for everyone. And COVID kind of gave people the opportunity to explore other pathways without that societal pressure. Because it's not so much an internal pressure for a lot of people. They know kind of what direction they want to go in, but obviously can be encouraged one way or the other. So it's very important. Um, and moving on, do you think there's a moment in your college experience where you felt unsure of your abilities, and how you overcame that? Obviously, as a first gen student, you have your own set of challenges that are different from someone else. So,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of times where I've had that question and moment so many times. There's certain points where like you're writing an essay and you don't know what words to use. There's certain points where you're assigned a class reading or an article or a book that's just beyond your head and you've never heard of these things in your life. You don't know who to ask and the deadline's coming up so soon and you feel like you weren't prepared. But I think the best way I overcame those hurdles is really connecting with like my campus, my instructors, and my peers. Just knowing that you're not alone and that if you have this question and concern, chances are there's 10 other people right behind you with the same question and concern. So I learned very quickly that just because you're going into college, it doesn't mean you have to know everything. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It's actually meant to be a space to help you grow as a student and as a professional because not only are these classes helping you to just get your degree, but it's also preparing you for using problem solving skills, critical thinking, and just developing your personality and creativity to navigate the world after college because college is not our end goal. We're in post-secondary education, but we're also looking at post-secondary opportunities. So I think realizing that sometimes it might seem like this is it. It's not. There's ways to get out of difficult situations. If you get low grades, there's people who are willing to help you. It's not You're not alone. I think that's just the biggest thing I can put out there. You're not alone. And there's ways to get tutoring the same way in high school, how we have like library tutoring, we have resources, we have liaisons, we can go to counselors. College is the same thing, just at a very more calm pace. So I
yeah.
think more welcoming for learning. Yeah.
I agree with that. Do you think that there's a specific resource or mode of communication that you preferred with your teachers? Or I know you went to such a wide variety of size schools.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for students who are trying to, maybe they just transferred and they don't know any of the teachers yet, or they're trying to join a club? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah. I've been to community college, state schools, and R1s. So I've had kind of like a range of experiences with navigating those spaces. I would say emailing is your best bet. I know it might seem scary and daunting, like how do I write this email? What do I say? How do I introduce myself? We have internet now. It's a very wonderful tool. Being able to Google like an article about how do I send an email to a club advisor or how do I send an email to a professor? And then making sure you're not copying the template exactly the way it's written online, but putting your own voice to it. Oftentimes, professors, club organizations on campus and associations, they want to get to know you. So being yourself really carries that. And I think it doesn't matter if you feel like, oh, I'm just a student. This person is so important and so big. In reality, like everybody's at the same level. And just because someone has a little more experience than you, it doesn't mean that you yourself don't bring your experiences. I think as first gen students, we may feel at times that we're not capable of matching superiors in the field, but oftentimes like your lived experiences and your stories is what carries your weight too, because that's its own beauty of itself. So just truly acknowledging that you deserve to be in the spaces that you occupy.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was just gonna say that you have every right to be there as much as any other kid, or adult. And you have to, step out of your comfort zone a little bit and take the leap because ultimately the professors and the aides and people working there are there to help you and they want you to succeed. So, yeah, that's great. Um, and then, kind of just talking about today's landscape and the shift. I know we both were among the students that it was tests required. Now it's shifting to a more test optional policy. How do you think that students who maybe are struggling with their grades, what extra pieces of their college application do you think they should invest their time in or be more mindful of?
Yeah. So honestly, at the time I was applying to colleges, like you mentioned, Haley, like it was test required. There's no way around that. But at the time, my test scores were low, my class grades were low, and I felt like I wasn't a prime candidate. So getting accepted into San Jose State was a shocker for me. But the way I navigated it is making sure you highlight in your essays. I think your essays are the one space you can truly showcase who you are as a person. If your grades are low, it's okay. If you feel like you don't have enough awards, extracurriculars, volunteer hours, or let's say you've been working, because for me, I worked throughout high school as well. And most of my time went towards working. It's okay to disclose that in your essays, being sure because these are also skill sets and it also shows colleges that you're well-rounded. So being very transparent about who you are, and instead of writing for what you think colleges want to hear, write about what you want them to hear from you. Because this is truly what carries you. And honestly, that's what's gotten me into any of the degree programs I've been in, is just being myself. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be a straight A student. You don't have to be in every sports, every band, every scholarship program that your high school has to offer. But if you have the determination, the drive, and the dedication, if you can show that in your essays and start early, that's what counts. So making sure you go to your per teachers, getting editing help, going to your career counselor on campus, just talking to people or even your friends and family, like, hey, can I read this out loud to you and tell me what you think? The more people and input you get, the better your essay is going to be. So I think that's really where you can focus on.
I agree with you. I think especially that main essay that's getting sent out, not a lot of schools require a supplemental. So it's really your shot to say, I know what it looks like on paper, but here are my values and let the passion show through your writing. Everyone always says show, don't tell. You're not telling these admissions officers, well, I had a really hard time because I was working all of high school. No, say because I was working, I learned XYZ and just let it all come through. And of course, being yourself is the most important. So
Mhm.
yeah, I agree with you. Um, what do you think, I know specifically for first gen students, it's a very difficult time right now, but do you think there's a moment where you doubted yourself and, of course there's moments where everyone doubts themselves, but was there someone or like a support system that you relied heavily on, whether it was your parents or teachers, and who gave you that little extra push to show, you're meant to be here?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a question I grapple with even to this day. I think imposter syndrome, not feeling like you belong where you are, or you're not doing enough, or also why am I doing this is a big question that comes up a lot. And for me at the time, it was definitely my grandparents. My grandparents really carried me because to me, whenever a problem seemed really big or I felt like I wanted to drop out and just give up, it's just seeing the joy on their faces and seeing the happiness and the excitement. Because for them, they immigrated to a country they knew nothing about. But to hear everything that I'm doing based off of like their one sacrifice would just lighten up their day. My parents also telling them about what I'm doing, to them, it was interesting because they've never heard of this stuff before. So even when you're going through college, you might feel chronically alone because you're a first gen student, but you're basically living out your family's dreams in a way. So involving them in the process really helps. I have friends too that didn't go to college, but that was my support system, like going to my community, my friends, my family, my grandparents. And moreover, once you get to college, you also find other first gen students or other students who are second gen students. And everybody ironically feels the same way, even though you think it's just you. So whenever I have those situations, I think it's just pulling upon who I know I can trust and talk to. It's okay to cry. It's okay to eat a tub of ice cream. It's okay to scream in a pillow. Do what you have to do to take care of yourself, but just know that it's natural and it's a part of the growing process to be uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah, I love that you said that because, uncomfortableness, it's a natural part of growing up and it can be daunting, but pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone will ultimately propel you into the next phase of your life. The next, you may discover something about yourself that you never knew. So that's always great. And yeah, I really like what you said so far. I want to redirect a little bit to what work you're doing now, and just kind of hear more about it and let our viewers understand why it's so important.
Yeah, so at a glance, I basically am, I would classify myself as a race researcher. I focus on the inclusion of all learners in academic spaces. I particularly focus on special education, focusing on the early years of life, so early intervention. And what I look at is basically how we culturally adapt our practices and our approaches to understanding instruction, curriculum, and interventions. So this can look like if we have an individual education plan committee team at a school, how they're navigating talking to families and really incorporating families into the discussion. How, as a teacher in the classroom, how are you formatting your lesson in your lecture or your content or your intervention or your assessment to include all students? And I look at basically how this affects us at a personal level, at a policy level, and a community level. That's like the primary crux of my work, but within my PhD program, primarily right now within sociology, I'm basically looking at the representation of Asian Americans, specifically South Asian families, and how they navigate systems, whether that be medical systems, whether that be special educational systems, looking at access and how we access information and how that looks like at the family and the student level.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate having you on today. Is just to final words, what do you think our viewers should take away from today's podcast?
Yeah, I would say the main takeaway is strive for your goals, no matter how scary and uncertain you may think they are. Even if you fail along the way, there's beauty in failure where you learn. And even if it might look like a setback, it's actually setting you up for the path that you're meant to be on. So keep trying. And if I'm any proof to what keep trying looks like, if I can do it, you can do it. So I look forward to seeing you guys in educational spaces.
Yes, thank you so much for being on today, Melody. We really appreciate having your time. And I just want to say special thank you to our sponsors, Siembra Mobile. They are changing the way education is being conducted in virtual communities and spaces. And we love that they're a part of our lives. And um, thank you again so much for joining us today, Melody. And to our viewers, thank you so much for being here. We know your time is valuable. So we really appreciate it. And please like and subscribe so you never miss the next episode. Thank you.